Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today I'm going to go through some of the lineups that I'm going to be using for Operation Winter. Just to give you an idea, I've done these events for 6 or 7 years straight. I haven't missed one in a very long time. And the lineups that I used have changed because of the fact that, BRs change. So you've got to kind of mold them around different things. We'll do one lineup for each nation. And also understand that I play ground realistic to be able to get the air and ground tests done, and I play Naval Arcade to do the naval stuff. So that's the points of view I'm coming from. So we'll do each nation getting one ground lineup, and then also the naval lineups I'll be looking at using while doing the grind. These obviously might change, and also at the same time, I will be streaming the event and streaming getting the stars and stuff, so if you have any extra questions or if you have any thoughts, make sure to come along and let me know. So let's get into the lineups. So for America, the 6-7 lineup for me is always going to be the one to go back to. There's a few other lineups which are really fun for America as well, such as the 401 with the M4A2, the M19, and also the M24. That one works pretty well. 5-7 as well. The 76 Shermans, the Jumbo, and then the Hellcat, and then also the Black Cat if you have it. But the 6-7 one is probably the one which has the most options, and you have a really good balance of heavy tanks and light tanks. So you have the 3 light tanks, which are all really fun to play. The T-92 is probably my favorite tank in the game, just because it's so versatile in what it's able to do. And also really, really good for getting into planes. Then you have the 6-7 Stompers. When it comes to the heavies, my favorite is the T-34. But you could easily put the T-26 in this lineup. It just has not as good of a cannon, but it does have a better reload. And the T-26E1, which is okay, but once again, I just think the T-34 is better. You could even do 7-7 for America. You could do a ton of lineups for America. 8-0 is stupidly strong right now, by the way. AOS, T-95E1, M60A2, then the M901 if you want to put that in. The Bradley is here as well. Then also the M163. Like that's a killer lineup for ground. But also, for me, 6-7 is a little bit low BR, so it's going to be easier to play for most people. And also, the aviation you get alongside of it is really, really strong. So, generally, when it comes to aviation for 6-7, you have the F-7s, and they're okay, but not the best pick because they're quite cumbersome. They do have a really good bomb drop, though, 2 500s and 1 1000, and also can dominate the air pretty well. But I think it's actually much better to go for the P-51H, just because it's a really good air superiority fighter. It is really expensive, though, so just remember that while flying it out. If you don't have the SL, then you're going to struggle. The other vehicles, you can put in the F2G Super Corsair if you want to. This one gets independent bomb drops, so you can nuke 2 targets with the 1,000 pounders, which is really nice. That's super strong. Or you can put in the AD4, but the AD4, understand that this machine cannot really protect itself until it's got rid of all of its ordnance, and that's not really that easy to do. So if you have complete air dominance, the AD4 is kind of a good way to go. But if you don't, P-51H. P-51H is a fantastic vehicle, with the bombs, and you can basically get a guaranteed kill with the bombs, and then the 50 cals are really good for getting assists, and also really good for maintaining a superiority with the wonderful engine that this thing has to keep it in the air. It also doesn't have to worry about running out of WEP like it does in Air Realistic because of the fact that you're in ground and the games don't last as long as Air Realistic when it comes to setup. So it's just a really, really good vehicle, and you can use either the M56, the T92, or the Ontos to get into it, get some scouts going, get some caps going, and then from there, you can do really well. If you get into a down tier, just spawn this thing. It's great for getting the 6 kills, and it's really hard to kill. You basically have to lower plate it, or sometimes shoot through the mantlet. But generally, you just want to rock up when you're facing tigers and just batter them in the face. This is probably one of my favorite lineups in the game. It's really, really fun to play. For Naval, this is probably my favorite lineup out of the bunch. Basically, you have 3 PT boats that are really strong for America, plus a Hellcat with the torpedo, and also the F4U-1D for extra fighter support. Now, the reason why you take the Hellcat is because of of the torpedo. Normally this lineup, since it's 3-0, it gets put into matches a lot with reserve destroyers, such as like the Litchfield and other machines like this, and because it gets into these matches, a lot of the reserve destroyers or destroyers around there, they don't have a lot of AA. So you can transfer from one of these PT boats, which have a ton of armament on them and also torpedoes, into the Hellcat after getting a few kills or a cap, and you're able to mop up a bunch of destroyers by just basically hitting them with the torpedo, and that counts for the torpedo kills. So it doesn't count for the damage when it comes to that, but the torpedo kills I think are harder to get in general, and this is the normal way at least I do them. The PT boats, so you've got the gun boat that has all of the guns on it, you have the one which is kind of the middling machine, and then you got the Thunderbolt Premium. Now, if you don't have the Thunderbolt, that's completely fine. You can put in any of the 2.7s if you want to, or you can put in the PT-658, which is the Battle Pass vehicle right now, and once again, very similar to the 59 that, oh sorry, the 565 that we have here. So yeah, you can just chuck it in and have a bit of fun with it. The Thunderbolt is really good because it has this quad 20 on it. So what you can do is you fire off your torpedoes. If you're within 2 kilometers of any enemy, you can just turn around and just annihilate everything that is behind you. And while you're going away from the enemy, it's harder for them to hit you. It's a perfect combo. It works really well. The only issue with these things is they don't have a lot of survivability, so you want to engage stuff at 1.5 to 2 kilometers, so your guns such as the Bofors and also the 20mm are still effective, but also at the same time, the enemy guns aren't as effective. So yeah, you got to think about playing in that way. But this is probably the main lineup I'm going to be using. It's the one that I can get the naval test done the quickest and also have the most fun because it's fast, mobile, and a ton of guns, which is very, very fun. For Germany, I really like using the 5.3 lineup. The reason for this is because you dodge the 6.7 BR, which is incredibly strong for a lot of nations, and also you can get into 4.7 matchmaking and just dominate. At 5.3 for Germany, you have a lot of really nice vehicles in the ground sense. You got the Tiger H1, you got obviously the Panther D, and also the Ostwind, which is great AA support. Generally, when going after the 6 kills, sometimes it's best to actually have an AA in your lineup, and the reason for this is because of the fact that a lot of people spawn in aircraft in this event. So if you start seeing a ton of aircraft, you can get in the Ostwind, you can kill a few of them and get closer to that 6 kills. If you don't like AA, you can always put in the Panzer 470. It works very well, has a tank destroyer, one of the better ones in the game. Still has issues with people penning it, but still, it's not too bad. The Nashorn as well, but I wouldn't recommend that. If you do have some other vehicles, you know, you can put the Furry Tiger in here if you want to, and also the VK4501P, but they're not really required for this lineup if you want to do well in it. Also, you can go to 5.7 if you feel like it. You know, the Tiger E, which is there, the Panther A, and also the Waffenträger for long-range stuff. So if you want to go to 5.7, you can, and you might want to, because if you have the Do 335 B2, that's actually a pretty good ground attacker, so you can throw that in as well, and also maybe the K4 as some air superiority. The only issue with this lineup is the aircraft. The aircraft are definitely not the best. You know, we have the B6R3, which is, you know, completely fine. It's a vehicle which generally, forgot about this skin. It's a vehicle which generally needs air superiority to be pretty useful. Because it has the Mk103s, which is nice, but once there's another plane in the air, it definitely has a bit of a problem because of its lack of being able to, you know, dogfight properly. So it's not the best. The Ju-188 is actually really good because it gets the 2 massive bomb drops. So you get the 1800 kilo bomb drop and also the 1000. They do drop independently. So once again, if you have air superiority, this thing isn't a bad bet, but it's kind of hard to get air superiority sometimes. So that's one of the issues when it comes to this BR. I generally think it's a fun BR though, as long as you know how to play the Tiger, and the basic way of playing the Tiger is doing this. There you go, fixed all your issues, or maybe this. There you go, fixed all your issues playing the Tiger. and it's just a fantastic vehicle. Panther D has a pretty bad turret rotation, but you can fix that by just turning the vehicle quickly, and also at the same time you need to play it a little bit more defensively because it has pretty much no side armor. But this is a really fun lineup. If you don't like this one, the other two banger lineups for Germany are 7-3 right now, with the Leopard, the BMP, and the Marder, and also the Weasel and the DF-105, which just came in. Also, 9-0 is the strongest lineup in the game for any nation when it comes to Germany. The M48 Super, Leopard 185, also the TAM, the Beglette, if you want to throw them in. The Gepard is really good, and also the L44. So, a stupidly fun lineup if you want to play that one as well. For the Soviets, it's got to be 4-3 to play. It's a really, really fun lineup, and there are some really good ones as well. Like 7-0 is stupidly strong right now for the Soviets, and can counter the 6-7 stuff with stuff like the IS-3 and the T-44-100. But I think 4-3 is just kind of the classic, which is really nice to play. 8-3 is also worth looking at. But when we have a look at 4-3, you've got the KV-1ZIS-5, which is your main banger. It's really good in general, just very aggressive, and the armor is very trolley on it, and has been for an incredibly long time. And that means that you can just kind of drive forward, have a bit of fun, and just smash people in the face. In a full up-tier, though, it can be a little bit rough, which is why we have the other two vehicles. So the ASU-57 might be a little bit of an odd pick to some people, but what this vehicle gives you is a platform to be able to get into the air quite quickly. So all you have to do is go cap something, and then also scout something, and maybe shoot something with the APC-BC, and you can get into an aircraft. So in a full up tier, I think this thing actually works pretty well in that regard. It can also be a nice little secondary or tertiary machine. If there isn't a lot of aircraft around, then you can use it to be able to go cap a point or something like that, which I think is pretty important when trying to win matches, and also trying to get the kills on a cap point done. The Su-85, you also take in up tiers. The reason is because you have the 85mm D5S. It's a really, really good gun. At the BR 4.3. It doesn't have a ton of armor on the front, doesn't need a ton of armor as long as you get the first shot off. It's obviously a tank destroyer, so it has all the problems of a tank destroyer, but it's on the T-34 chassis, so it's pretty quick. So at least there's that, which is quite nice about it. And as I said, the gun means that if you get up-tiered into Tigers, you can deal with them. You just have to play this a lot more defensively. For the aviation, if you don't have the ITP-M1 or the TISMA, then that's fine. You have a bunch of other stuff. The ITP, the reason to take it is because it has a 37 with 50 rounds in it, and also it gets 2 independent 100-kilo bomb drops. So if there's nobody else in the air, you can kill so many ground targets with this thing. It's insane. The TISMA is the same because it has 2 37s and also 150 rounds, and 2 independent 500-kilo bomb drops. So this thing is a monster, and that's why even in this scenario, up-tiering them is completely fine. You also have the ACT-9T you can bring in if you don't have them with the 37. This does wonders, again, for getting assists in air, and also packs a punch when dealing with other aircraft. The I-185s aren't a bad idea, because they do actually get access to some bombs as well, 250s, and then you can play the air superiority role. And the LA5s are okay, but not the best, so you probably want to take the I-185 and the ACT-9T, or maybe the ACT-9K, since they gave it APT for this lineup as well. 7-3 Britain is also quite nice, and the reason for this is because stabilizers, APDS, and OK armor and mobility means that these vehicles always do really well. There's a reason why this lineup went from 6-7 to 7-3 very, very quickly, and it's really, really strong in general. You also have the Centurion Mark V from the Battle Pass if you pick this up, but if you don't have that, that's fine. You can throw in the FV-4202. You just lose a little bit of a reverse gear, but everything else about it is fine. So yeah, this is a really banger lineup. It's fantastic at getting the 6 kills. It works incredibly well just using the gun. Good reload, good gun depression, decent mobility, good stabilizer, good APDS. There's nothing really wrong with it. The planes is a little bit lacking, and this is mainly because of one reason. They finally up-tiered the Vampire, so you can't put the Vampire in this lineup anymore. If you want to run the Vampire, you got to put the Conqueror into this lineup, which still works, by the way, if you want to do that. You know, that's kind of up to you. So instead, we have the Sea Meteor for air superiority, which is probably not the best pick, but it is a pick, I suppose. And then the Attacker, FB1, to give us the 2 1,000-pound drop, so we can nuke somebody if we need to. You can also bring, I suppose, some other aviation if you want to. Stuff like the Griffin Spit isn't that bad, the Hornet as well, but generally you don't want to do that because you're limiting yourself. There are some other lineups you can play. 4-7's pretty strong for the British, Churchill 7, the Sherman Firefly, and also the new Istavak if you want some AA, or the Avenger if you want some more oomph. That lineup works pretty well. The other ones are more higher BR ones, like 10-0's pretty strong, or 9-7 for Britain. The early challenges, or the Challenger 1s, are fantastic. They work incredibly well, and are normally undervalued in general. But I think sticking to the 7-3 lineup, or the 4-7 one for Britain, is the way to go. For Naval, Britain has got a really good 4-7 lineup that you can bring along, and it comprises of some really, really lovely destroyers. These destroyers are very front gun heavy, which works out well for them. You got the Nepal, the Kelvin, the Tobruk, and also the Armada, so you can pick which ones you want out of these. They have very good fast-firing turrets. They just generally don't have a ton of them, and it matters which one you take first. You want to take the ones which have more guns for killing ships first, so stuff like the Kelvin you want to take because it has 6 of the 4.7s, and then when you have a look at stuff like the Armada, you know, you only have the 2 sets of guns on the front, and same with the Tobruk, where you have these 2. Basically, what this means is you have a ton of AA support to take out aircraft, and also, if you want some more firepower, you can always bring in the Nepal, which has a very similar setup to the Kelvin when it comes to the guns. You also have the Mohawk, if you want to bring that along, if you have that from export order, and generally just a lot of firepower from the main guns and a lot of support power, so you can take out a lot of aircraft with this, and also a lot of smaller machines, which works really, really well. It's great for doing the damage task, probably not as good as 5.0 destroyers from America, but this is a slightly low BR, so a little bit easier to do. It's lacking a little bit in aviation, but you know, you can still get the torpedoes off. So you of course have the Firebrand TF Mark IV. It gets the really bad torpedo, so that's a little bit of an issue, but you can still you know, take this along if you want to. And then also the Bowfighter with the torpedo as well. So if your destroyers fail you, you can at least try and get some torpedo kills with this lineup. For Japan, the 4-7 lineup is tried and tested for me. I basically have 3 vehicles here which I really enjoy using. The Cheeto Late, the Cheeto, and of course the Chinu 2. All of these have served me really well. The Chinu 2 recently got up BR'd, but that's fine. I still run it with this lineup. It doesn't really affect it at all. The gun itself means that it is as useful at this lineup. And also at the same time, when we have a look at if you don't have the Chinu 2, you can throw in the Chaffee if you want to. It's a good light tank and great for getting into aircraft if you want to do it like that. Let's just hit Santa with a snowball. So the lineup itself is very powerful when it comes to dealing with you know, other enemy tanks. Even in an up tier, it can deal with stuff pretty effectively. It'll face a lot of Tigers and Panthers. You can pen all of them from pretty much anywhere with the Model 2 gun, and all of these have the Model 2 gun, so it works really well. It's a fantastic vehicle, and all of these are basically the same playstyle, so very easy to play as well. The aircraft, I run some fighters with this, with the 60 kilo bombs to try and overpressure an AA, and then use it as a fighter support, as shoot down aircraft. You can run the CO if you want to, but there are other options. If you want a bit of a bigger boom, you can run the B7A2. The P1Y1 also has 2 individual 500k bomb drops, but you can't really defend yourself myself, so I don't really like running that one that much. But the B7 with the 800 kilo bomb drop can be very devastating to an enemy, and also can fight afterwards, so you can do that if you feel like it. Generally, as I said though, I like using air superiority fighters with this one, because I am mainly focusing on using these three right here, and then from there, if I die in them, then it's playtime, but generally not. Normally I just focus on ground on this lineup. For China, it's the tried and tested, it's the 5-7 lineup. The 5-7 lineup is fantastic. It has everything you would want in the world. It has two medium tanks in the form of the T-3485 and also the T-3485, these two basically. And then also you have AA support from the Duster or the Fong Kong. Then you've got the light tank in the form of the M18 or the PT if you are masochistic, but the M18 is obviously way better than it. You've got the IS-2 for the extra thump, you have the Slugger for a bit more extra thump, and then the ISU-122 once again if you're masochistic. So there's a really good lineup here for ground. Basically what I do is I spawn in a Hellcat, I go cap a zone, I go scout stuff, I go shoot things and get some kills, and then I transfer into the P51K. Now the P51K has a really high repair cost, but it does get the two 1,000 pound bomb drop, which is really nice, and then you can use it as an air superiority fighter, or you can use it as an assist machine, or you can use it to go harass AAs. Anything open top, the 50 cals will annihilate, just like how you do the P51H, just a slightly lower BR, so it's easier to do. Simple as that really, and it'll work incredibly well for you, and definitely worth doing with. If you are close to getting the 4 kills for the aircraft, maybe you got 3 in the P51, the TU2S is the way forward. And the reason for this is because it gets the 1,000 kilogram and 2,500 kilo drop. All of these drop independently, so you have 3 chances of getting kills. This is, if you get in a plane really quickly and there's no other planes in the air, this is actually a really good pick, so you can get some really cheap, easy kills on the ground. But generally you want to spawn in the P51K instead. And then after, dying in the plane, which normally happens eventually, you transfer either to the T-3485 if there's a lot of enemy aviation up. If there isn't, then you go for the M36, because the gun on the M36 is really nice at 5.3, and also the 50 cal is nice, and everything about it is okay. It just gets overpressured and once getting killed by planes, so that's why it can be a little bit dodgy. If you don't like this lineup, there's plenty of others for China which are pretty strong. You've got stuff such as the 801, the 5969 PTL02, M41 now, and also the TOW. If you're a masochist, the WZ305 is incredibly strong as an AA. This is a banger of a lineup, and then also you can bring along some aviation with it, such as the MiGs or the F-84 for some ground ordnance. The 87 one is also very strong, so ZTZ-59, TTS, and then also the PTZ. You can also bring along some of the low stuff like the PTL02, and also some of the planes if you want. But I think the 5.7 lineup is the one to go for. It's the best one to play, and also the most fun. France is a little bit of a tough one because they've annihilated my favorite lineups at low tiers, so you can't bring them anymore. They annihilated the 3.7 lineup by putting up the FL11, so you can't do that. Instead, if you want to run that, you're going to have to do it with 2 vehicles and then a rank 2. So I suppose you can do that, but you can't fully, so that kind of sucks. They also annihilated my 4.7 lineup as well, so that doesn't exist anymore. And now we're stuck with a really weird 5.3 lineup, which I don't really favor. So 7.7 is the way to go for France, or 8.3. Both of those lineups are really strong. 7.7 with the Lorraine 40T, and also the AMX-30 1972, AMX 1390. This works really well. So Basset, if you want to have a bit of fun with it as well. AMX-50, the Foch you can throw in there as well, and also the AML-90. This is a really strong banger lineup, a very aggressive go at the enemy, smash them up lineup, and generally they can be really fun. 8.3 is also an option, and a fantastic lineup as well if you have it modified. So the AMX 30B2 and the Brennus, they're both the same BR now, which is kind of funny. because, of course, you know, the Brennus is just better than it. But also, they have the 20, they have thermals, they have laser rangefinders, they have APF SDS, they have everything you would want. The only thing they don't have is a stabilizer. And you can play around that, trust me. I've been able to play around it quite a lot and do pretty well with it. So the reason why they're the BR that they're at is because of the lack of stabilizer. But you can see here with the Brennus and also with the B2, done very well, and also good win rate with them as well, just playing them. And then the SK-105 is a monster. It is a literal monster on the battlefield. Gen 2 thermals, 4-second reload, APF SDS, laser rangefinder, but modding it is a little bit of a pain. So if you don't have it modded, then yeah, of course it's a little bit of an issue, but it's fantastic at 8.3. You can also throw in the DCA and also the Mars if you want to, but it's not great, and also the AMX-10RC, which is pretty good when fully spaded. The planes, you know, the MD-452, you got the Defers, so you can top down vehicles. You also get 2,000-pound bombs, which you can do something with. And then the F-84G, you obviously have the independent drops and also the 50 cals, which is quite nice, but it's a bit low BR and not great against radar guided stuff. So you want to kind of stick to the ground on this one. But yeah, 7.7 or 8.3 for France. France is my favorite nation to play in ground, and I would definitely say these are two banger lineups. With Sweden, you have a few options. 8.3 is definitely one of them if you have the 103C spaded and if you have the 104 spaded. This is not a lineup you want to take if you don't have the vehicle spaded for the event, because you're going to go up against 9.0 a lot and you're going to need all the help that you can get against those vehicles. So if you have these spaded, it could work out. The 103C is probably the worst of the 103s because its armor doesn't hold up to scrutiny when facing targets, but its gun is very good, the reload's good, and after the hull traverse changes, it is manageable to use. The 91-105 is incredibly good as a light tank. The 105 is very strong, and it also has everything you would want in a vehicle at this BR, with the APF SDS, the laser rangefinder, and the scouting. Only issue with it is, of course, it gets artillery to death, and the 104 is a pretty bog standard machine. The Vampire, the reason why we take the Vampire is because of the secondary ordnance. It gets some really interesting rockets which are pretty accurate when used, so you can use them to hit the ground pretty efficiently and be able to take out targets. The Saab 105 as well is a vehicle to look at, not because it has the 30mm, which are very strong, but it also gets 4 1,000 pounders as well, or 500 pounders that it can bring with the guns. So you can actually have a really good time with it if you want to. I think this is definitely one to look at. You can also take the SK if you want, the SK60B at a slightly lower BR because it has access to RB05s, so those can be really effective as well. Other lineups which are pretty good, 4.0, so PVKV2, fantastic vehicle, just has a bit of a long reload, everything else is fine about it. PVKV, a very good gun on a really bad platform, but works out at 4.0, and also you can bring along the J22B for some fighter support, and also the B18 or the T18B to destroy stuff. You also have a few other really good lineups. Obviously 11.0 is very strong for Sweden, has been for a very long time, and also some mid-tier stuff like the 7.3 area or 7.7 is pretty good, with the 101, the 103, and even the 81 if you want to bring that, or the UDES or the IKV91. Those work pretty well if you have also the 103.0, but I think 8.3 is more of a banger lineup. 7.3 or 7.7 is easier to play, but if you can get this lineup rocking, it is absolutely fantastic. Those are all of the lineups that I'm going to be using during this event, and maybe some others, because I also want to grind some Israeli stuff, but we'll see. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Professor X 1718, Orange Tail, Sakoshi Tiger, BRFC 15, Teddy, John Ryman, Universe A, Eugens Terry, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, and then Kyle Kin, Barine, Lafouche, and also Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.